Y'all ready for this? For those of us in radio, for those of us in records, we know that for the last 25, 30, 35 years, actually since rock and roll began, a big scare for record companies was the, what do you call it, leaking of music before the record actually came out. Okay, and it's more prevalent now with the internet and all the different ways that music can be stolen and be on the radio before it's really released. Well, back in the 80s, when I was at A&M Records from 80 to 90, in the 80s, we were pretty careful. If we had a new Sting record, if we had a new Janet record, we were always very, very careful, and there were very few times there were leaks. And every now and then when there was one, when all of a sudden Quixie in Atlanta was playing our record 5 days before it came out, 9 of us would jump on an airplane and get to every radio station in America within 3 days to give them a copy so they wouldn't be pissed off that one station had it. Well, in 1983, we had a new Styx record about to come out. And there was a PD at K-Earth. And his name was Bob Hamilton. I don't know if he's here or not. Oh, there he is.
Maybe we should get him over here.
So I get a phone call. Actually, I was sitting with Charlie Miner, my partner, and most of you know Charlie. And Charlie turns white. And I knew it was Bob because his secretary, Andrea, said, "Hey, Charlie, it's Bob on 3. Picks it up. And he turns white. And Charlie said, he puts him on the speaker, says, "Steve, listen, we're talking to Bob Hamilton, and in the background, he's playing The Best of Times by Styx, which nobody has. Nobody has this record. Nobody's going to have it for a week and a half, 2 weeks." And Bob says, "Well, I'm about to put it on the air." And we said, "Bob, please, no, please don't put it on the air. It's the last thing in the world we need." And Bob was a mensch. He didn't play the record.
He would charge you $500.
Three or four or five, a lot more than that. I think it was a Rolls Royce. I think it was. You still got that car?
No.
So 3 or 4 days later, Charlie and I, and maybe a couple other people in the office, but Charlie and I each got a little present, a little gift. It was a Christmas gift. It wasn't really related to the Styx thing, but we had Bob on our mind, and we got a gift. And the gift that I got was a little tiny tree, a little bush or tree or whatever, and it was very nice. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. It was a little tiny tree, and I didn't know what to do with it, so I took it home and put it on the kitchen table for a few weeks. And finally, my gardeners come every Friday. I said, "Will this grow if we put it in the ground, whatever, you know?" And they said, "Oh, well, we'll find a place for it." Does everybody see that tree right there, that pine tree right there? That's my Bob Hamilton pine tree. This one right here. See that tree? That's my Bob Hamilton Best of Times Styx tree. Thank you, Bob.
It's always a musical tree.
Anyway.
I want to hear Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog.
I don't know that record.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Joy to the World. Oh, that record, yeah. Anyway, that's my little presentation for Bob today.
Oh, there you go, Steve Resnik with the tree. The tree of life, yes. The tree of payola has been growing for many, many years now. And speaking of growing, the crowd grows every year. You know, we started this thing a half dozen years ago, and it was just 4 people sitting around picking their nose. But now, it's huge. It's phenomenal. Look who's here. Everybody's here. We're going to walk around and talk to some of these people, and you're going to have a ball. You're going to feel like you've been here.
By the way, welcome to everybody. And it's so great to have you here at our museum. And by the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Oni over here for 4 days of cooking and if you guys noticed, first of all the fantastic food that she prepared, but for those of you who don't know Oni, she worked under 3 presidents. She had a foundation and went to the White House for 12 years without showing ID, just walk in, go anywhere she wanted, and worked under both George Bush's and Bill Clinton. So today I had the feeling, or this whole week, nothing was good enough. The spoons, the forks. No, we have to go get better ones. We have to go get the best things. We have to cook the best food. I expected George Bush and Bill Clinton to walk in. But thank you, Oni, for putting all that together. And I hope everything was terrific there. Now, some of you have been to all 7 of Art's little gatherings, although the first one was only 7 people. 6 people. And it's grown and grown and grown, and we'll just keep on doing it as long as we all feel like doing it. It's a lot of fun to get together and to share the memories. And some of you are just coming for the first time. And one of those people coming for the first time is Ted Cohen over here. And when I told Ted to come by and visit, he said, "Well, what kind of a get-together is it? And I said, well, I got a lot of radio people, record people, and a lot of voiceover people. He said, oh, my voiceover people. Ted, come over here. Ted decided to bring something along just to share for the day. And I want you to explain what it is to everybody.
Oh, okay. So literally about 15, it could be 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, I went to Santa Monica Civic to a antiquarian book fair. And I'm walking around bored to tears, and I find this. And I look at it, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. And you should come by and take a look at it. It was the sign-in wall in Mel Blanc's recording studio. So it's Casey Kasem, Ernie Anderson, Howard Morris, Jesse White, Rod Serling, Marty Ingalls, Gary Owen. Names here I don't even know that you guys. Ernie Anderson, who was Goulardi when I grew up in Cleveland. Tim O'Connor. What's her name? Jo Ellen Gerber gives great voice. Danny Dark. It's basically, it was the wall when they came in to do voiceover. You'd sign his wall, and his son Noel sold it. And when I got it, I'd say 90% of these people were still alive, and I'm not sure who on here is still alive. But I had this in the room when he mentioned there were going to be a lot of voice talent here today besides radio. I mean, I knew the radio folks. I said, I think I have something that some people might want to see, and I'll bring it over and let it sit here for a while. So that's it. And I've loved this thing. And when I try and explain to people who Ernie Anderson was, or, that Rod Serling did voiceover besides doing, it's pretty cool. And that's it. And it's great to be here, and it's great to see. I haven't seen Don Whittemore in years. I haven't seen Joel in a few years. Bob Hamilton, I did the faux pas of confusing him with my other friend, Bob Hamilton, and then went back and apologized profusely. So it's really great to be here, and the food is amazing. Thank you so much. And I said to Maggie, my fiance, you had to come with me today and see this because she thinks I have a lot of stuff laying out around the house. And I said, this is just to take the pressure off. That's the only reason I'm here is, no, I know that's only one tour jacket hanging by the front door, not a whole. But I think I have some new ideas, actually.
I'm always open to ideas. And by the way, I thank those of you who brought something to share with the museum today. And there you go. Exactly. And again, I'll miss some people, but for some other, when I was mentioning that some people have only come to this for the first time, I see Wink and Sandy just walked in. Wink Martindale, everybody. Sandy. And right. And now, even though Wink and Sandy have been here to see the museum, it's their first time to Art's special luncheon. And Larry Elder, and I apologize, Nina, first time for these guys over here as well. And in fact, who else is here for a first time? Who's here for the? Oh, thank you. Wow, look at this, everybody. Dewey Phillips and Wink. And we've got something special to share with Wink when we get to the Elvis room in a few minutes. I got something that I want to surprise Wink with. But remember, for those of you who don't know, most of you probably all know, but Wink was at WHBQ. What years? Even though we've talked so many times, tell us about what it was like to be at HBQ. And did you already know Elvis before you played his music, or did you meet him as he here?
No,
I was a story about that.
I was the morning man at WHBQ Radio, which was in the old Chiska Hotel on South Main Street in Memphis. And I did the Clock Watcher show in the morning, and we played what I call vanilla music, Como, Joe Stafford, people like that. But at night, there was a guy doing a show called Red Hot and Blue. His name was Dewey Phillips. And he played black music for white kids. He had 65, 70% of the audience at night from 9 to midnight. And one night I happened to be there in July 1954, showing some of my football playing buddies from my hometown, Jackson, Tennessee, around the radio station. They wanted to see WHBQ. So that's the only reason I was there that night. And I heard a commotion in the studio where Dewey was doing his show. And it turned out that I went in the control room, and there was Sam Phillips. He had just handed Dewey an acetate. All of us in radio know what an acetate was.
And they weren't related, right?
No relation whatsoever. But Sam Phillips, who founded Sun Records, handed him an acetate of That's All Right Mama. Dewey put it on the turntable, played it 7 times consecutively because the switchboard lit up like a proverbial Christmas tree. And so with all the excitement going on, Sam had Elvis's parents' telephone number, and I happened to be the one in the control. I'm the only one living today who was there that night in the control room. He gave me the telephone number. I called Gladys and Vernon. They lived in low-rent housing in East Memphis called Lauderdale Courts. And she answered the phone, and I said, "Is Elvis there?" She said, "No, he was so nervous about his record being played that he went to see a double feature at the Suzors over on Western." So they got in their truck, and they went down, walked up and down, and there he was sitting there by himself in a dark theater watching this Western movie. And they whispered to him about the excitement. So they brought him down to WHBQ Radio, and that was the night I met him, and he remained a friend till the day he died. And that was the beginning of Presley Mania, that night, July 1954. I just happened to be there.
So HBQ played some records before his RCA days. They played the Sun records.
Oh, yeah. He hadn't even cut a flip side. Sam didn't have a flip side because he just wanted to test this That's All Right Mama. And it wasn't until following Thursday that they cut Blue Moon in Kentucky. And they put it out. Of course, as you all know, it was a regional hit, but wasn't anything big. Never became, a big hit. And he never had his million seller until Heartbreak Hotel, his first record on RCA.
Well, tell the story about Elvis doing your dance party show.
Yeah, well, I met him that night. Of course, he became a friend. And Fade to Black come up on 1956. He was back there from Hollywood. He had done his first movie, Love Me Tender, and he was doing a benefit for Cynthia Milk Fund, a very large charitable organization there in Memphis. And he wanted to promote that, and of course, I wanted to have him on my teenage dance. I was sort of the Dick Clark of Memphis in those days, when every city had its Dick Clark in the halcyon days of American Bandstand. And so he agreed. He came on, and it was the first filmed interview that he ever did. I found out later. In fact, we didn't have videotape. There was videotape in '56, but WHBQ TV didn't have the funds yet to buy these very expensive machines. And somebody just happened to suggest to me that I get a photographer to come in, since Elvis was getting so big, and film the thing. So I got a guy named Bob Zimmerman to come in and set up his 16 millimeter camera right in front of the jukebox where I did all my interviews. And just happened to film it. I had cue cards all over the control room, all over the studio, because there were so many questions I wanted to ask him. If y'all remember, in 1956, all hell was breaking loose. This guy was just, there had never been anybody like him then or since. And there was so much that everybody wanted to hear about him, because he hadn't really been interviewed extensively. So I had all these questions plastered all over the studio. And it was a Saturday afternoon, 5 to 6:30, sponsored by Coca-Cola. And you can imagine the security at that time. All the people who were off that day, salespeople, everybody came back to the station because they wanted to. The control room was packed with people because they wanted to see what this guy looked like. And it was quite an afternoon, and one that is ingrained in my memory for all time.
Wow. That's an important history. While you were talking, I just remembered, I was in college radio at LA Valley College in '67 and '68, just out of high school after I failed out of college and almost went to Vietnam, but went back to college. But in 1967, the station was KLAV, and then in '69 and '70, I went to KSLA, which I renamed KBLA because the station from Burbank was gone at that time. And both those radio stations were carrier current 2 watts. Went to parking lots A and B on windy days. But I was just learning radio.
That's how you got started.
That was it. And for my LA Valley College first semester, I had to do an hour special on something at the end of the year for my, whatever you called it, for the final test or whatever, in the broadcasting class. And I decided to do an hour special on the history, my own version of the history of Elvis Presley. And one of the distributors at one of the record labels, maybe RCA, I don't know, said, well, you got to call Wink Martindale because he's got an interview with Elvis that he did, and you can use it in your show. And I said, well, he's not going to let me have that, plus I don't know him. And you were, back then, radio guys were legends, and you were definitely one of those legends. And it's not like today where there's Ryan Seacrest, a couple of morning guys are legends. You and BMR and Bill Balance and Robert W. and Don Steele were legends. Shadoe Stevens over there were legends, in the business. Shotgun Tom. and I got my nerve up and called you, and that's when I first met you, and you couldn't have been nicer. You said, drive down here to KFWB, and I got a copy on cassette I will give you, and I used it in my special, and that's when I first met you. And 1 year later, the music director, Bob Kloffenstein, remember Bob K?
Yeah,
He called me up. He'd heard about me from somebody. Somebody said there's some kid in the Valley that knows a lot about records at LA Valley College, and you should get him in here because we have 2 rooms about this size. Well, not quite this big, but 2 big rooms full of records for the first 10 years of rock and roll, and there's thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of records nobody's ever filed. Would you like to be an intern and file the records? And to this day, that's one of my greatest memories is going to the second floor there at KFWB under Curl Collier. Was it Curl Collier or Westinghouse?
It was
Curl Collier, wasn't it?
Yeah, Crow Collier at that time.
And going up there, I was supposed to go in 1 day a week, and as the Beatles would say, I went in there 8 days a week just to watch you and whoever was there at the time, B. Mitchell Reed and Sam Riddle, whoever was on the air at that time. It was just a thrill for me to watch you guys on the radio, and I've known you since then, so thank you.
Just a quick story. I'll make this brief, but ties in with KFWB. And we were on the second floor, as you said, of the building there on Hollywood Boulevard. And I used to get off the air at 9 o'clock, and promotion guys, Gil Bogus, all of us would go downstairs and have breakfast at Aldo's down on the, on Hollywood Boulevard. And growing up, my greatest inspiration for being in radio, from the dramatic days of radio, was Mr. District Attorney. And I listened to it every Wednesday night as a kid. Mr. District Attorney, champion of the people, guardian of our fundamental rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, I say that simply because I'm sitting there having breakfast one morning, and there used to be a gentleman who walked by Aldo's. And I had told some of the guys the story about my growing up with Mr. District Attorney and how it had affected me as a kid, wanting to be in radio. And they found out that the guy that was walking by with a cane was an old man by the name of Jay Justin, who was a great radio actor. And he played the title role of Mr. District Attorney on network radio in the 1940s. And they kept saying, you ought to go out and say hello to him because, he meant so much to you in your career. And it's one reason you're here. And I said, no, I don't want to bother him. Sandy always says, you don't want to bother anybody. That's the trouble. You got to be more outgoing, So one morning I did. I walked out and I said, excuse me, Mr. Justin. And he had this mellifluous voice. I said, yes. He looked over his shoulder. I said, you don't know me from Adam, sir. My name is Wink Martindale. I'm a DJ at KFWB upstairs. And I just want you to know how much your radio show, Mr. District Attorney, meant to me when I was growing up as a kid. And you would have thought I had given him a check for $1 million, because he was so happy and so impressed. And he even said, can I buy you a cup of coffee? And I said, can you? So we marched by all the promotion guys, and Gil Bogus said to me, see? And we sat over in the corner. And for the next 2 hours, he regaled me with stories of classic old radio days. And it was, it was the kind of thing you dream about happening in your life. It was just unbelievable. And I was so happy that I did that. Because I get chills when I think about it. Because 2 weeks later, he had died of a heart attack. Yeah, just 2 weeks after that. But I'm sorry, I had nothing to do with Elvis or anything, but you were talking about downstairs and upstairs, and and that story came to my mind.
One last thing, by the way, as we continue with our little event today, probably 10% of you, 15% of you have not seen the entire museum, or the downstairs part of the museum, which this is only about 8 or 10% of what we have here. For those of you, when we go downstairs, I was just reminded that when I was at KFWB as the intern, Bob Kay, the music director, came to me one day after I was there about 8 months, and I found all the records. To me, they were beautiful, A through Z. Finished the whole thing. All the records were filed, and he called me in and said, "I've got good news and I got bad news." He said, "The good news is everybody from Wink to Bill Balance to Gene Weed to Sam Riddle, whoever was there at the time, thinks you did an unbelievable job, just fantastic. Bad news is we've been bought by Westinghouse and we go all news a week from Monday." So he said, I went to the new owners, Bob Kay said, I went to the new owners and said, what are we going to do with those 10,000 oldies? And the new owners said, well, we're not going to need them. We're going all news. And Bill Kay said, can I give them to this young kid, Steve Resnik, who's our intern? And they said no. They said, no, we don't think it would look right for some kid to be walking out with boxes of records. So Bob Kay said to me, if you can get yourself, go buy a briefcase that you can't see in, a biggest one you can get, and you can make all the trips you want. And I probably got about 7,000 of those 10,000. Now, there were 8 copies of Be True to Your School. I didn't need all 8, but, that's how I did it. I had a 66 Chevy Caprice. I went down those back stairs. I parked in that half alley there, and I made about 40 to 50 trips to my car until my car was touching the ground. And I made about 3 trips every day for a week and a half. And that's how I started the collection. You'll see later on, for those of you who haven't seen it yet. Those were once they only played a record 10 times. You probably know this better than I would. I was told they only played a record 10 times and they played another copy. So if they were going on a song, Be True to Your School, whatever it was, they would get 10 copies. But after those 10 were done, they said, we need 10 or 15 or 20 more, and they'd get commercial. They'd take them out of the warehouse. So they had both.
Well, I got on radio. It was quite accidental. I was living in Cleveland, even though I'm from L.A., and I was writing op-ed pieces for the newspaper. And every now and then I would get a rejection card, and every now and then they'd publish 1 or 2 of them. And they published one where I bitched and moaned about the size of government. It was too big, taxes were too high, too much regulation. And by the way, racism is no longer a major problem in America. They didn't care about taxes, they didn't care about regulation, they just cared about what I said about racism. I get a phone call from a producer of a radio show, and he asked me to come on to talk about this. And I went on. His name was Merle Paulus in Cleveland. And I went on for an hour. And I was called Bootlicking Uncle Tom, Foot Shuffling Uncle Tom, Sambo, Coconut, Coon, you name it. And I get back to my office. I said, I'll never do that again. The station manager calls me, and he said, I heard you today. You were funny. You have a good voice. You took difficult positions, and you defended them without losing your sense of humor. Have you ever thought about doing talk radio? And I said, no. He said, I got a guy going on vacation next week. Would you sit in for him? I said, no. He said, why? I said, I don't like yelling at people. I don't like being yelled at. He said, are you married? At the time I was. He said, do me a favor, go home to your wife, talk to her about the opportunity. I think you'll change your mind. I said, I'll do that, but I doubt that I'll change my mind. So I went home to my then wife, Cindy, and I told her about this. She said, well, what do you think about talk radio? I said, I know nothing about it. What little I know about it is it strikes me as shallow, glib, and stupid. She said, it is. You'd be good at it. So I did it for 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, I heard music. The oceans opened. I said, this is what I got to do. So it took me 2 years to meet people. I finally met Dennis Prager, who had me on his show, and the general manager, George Green, was driving that night and heard me, and then offered me a 2-day audition. After 1 day, he made me an offer, and I've been at KBC for 20-some-odd years. Got fired twice. Now I'm at KRLA, and as of April the 1st, I was just telling Steve, I should be in about 200 markets, including New York Live. I'll be back to my 3 to 6 time period, although it'll be delayed in L.A., and I'll be heard.
KRLA. This is a book from KRLA, which you are in here.
AM 870 now, yeah.
Right, it's different now, but go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
And so I'll be heard in more markets by more people than any time in my career. Had I not been fired from KBC, that wouldn't have happened. So KBC, thank you. Well, thank you. What it is I feel, seriously, what it is I feel supported. For the first time in 20 years, I've got people coming in saying nice things about the show. We like what you're doing. Keep it up. I sure should. From your lips to God's microphone. Thanks, Wink.
Okay.
Larry, I just want to say it was an honor to preempt you with Dodger Talk.
Now, this is great, everybody. Sandy Martindale right here. Fantastic history. Tell us a little story.
Well, first of all, I'm married to Wink, of course, for 40 years. And
You made mistakes, so go on. Just kidding.
I don't think so. I've had a lot of Tennessee in my life. My best girlfriend in high school is Brenda Lee, who's a singer. And I traveled all over the world with her when we were kids. And my dad had nightclubs in Los Angeles where we started the Righteous Brothers, Glenn Campbell, Roger Miller, Sonny and Cher. They all worked for my dad. But one of his first nightclubs was one called the Crossbow in Panorama City. And when Elvis first got out of the Army, that's the first place he went to have his recreation. Like on a Thursday night, he'd come there after shooting all day. And we had Lance LeGault was our house band, who was one of his friends, and then Red West, who was one of the Memphis Mafia, was our bouncer. So he felt safe coming there, and we had a balcony area where he'd be upstairs with Tuesday Weld or whomever, and they could dance and have fun and take part without anybody bugging him. Well, so he goes into my dad's office, and he sees my picture on the wall, and of course I looked different. I had long black hair at the time. And he said, "Oh, I'd like to meet your daughter." And my dad says, "Oh, well, okay, we'll call her." So they call me at home. I'm 14 years old. They wake me up, and he said, "Hi, I'm Elvis Presley, and I'd like to meet you." And I thought, well, what a funny name, Elvis Presley. And my mom said, "I'm not taking you to the club. You have to go to school tomorrow." No way. So then in the meantime, my dad comes home and tells me how gorgeous this guy is, and he's such a nice young man, and blah, blah, blah. And so this happened 2 or 3 times. And then finally, my mom says, "Okay, I'll drive you up next Thursday night." So my mom drove me to the club. I had a ponytail, a frilly little dress, and he had a date with a beautiful, sexy actress. And he held my hand, and he kissed me on the cheek, and I thought, wow, he really is nice, and he really is cute. And then he called my mom, and he said he wanted to date me. And my mom said, I don't care if you're King Farouk. My daughter's 14 years old. She cannot go out with you. And he said, well, you can come on the dates. So my mom came on the first 3 dates. That's when he used to stay at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. We ate pizza. We danced. We had a good time. And then she trusted him after that, and he promised her he'd be a gentleman and take good care of me. And he dated me right up until he got married, and we were best friends till the day he died. He was an Adonis. I mean, he was so gorgeous. Present company excluded.
Let me just say this, folks. I'm still standing, and I got it. So I don't think he was all that special.
Well, I do a lot of interviews with George Klein all the time. He's always calling us from Graceland to do interviews with both of us because we both have separate Elvis histories, and then we have our together Elvis history. And he always ends his time with me by saying, "Sandy, what was it like to kiss Elvis?" And my standard line is, Elvis was the best kisser, and Wink is the best husband.
That when we go into the Elvis room later, which some of you have been in, some of you haven't, I've got some outtakes that I can show you from the 1968 Leather Jacket special. I've got some of the only outtakes ever, and you'll see all the mistakes he made and swearing a few times, whatever. We'll watch a few minutes of that. But I want to say that as I show people that, and as I take people to the Elvis room, I say, at the risk of sounding gay, I think he's the best-looking man that ever lived.
I agree.
I just think there's no... And if we can steal you away from Elvis Presley, I won't finish the sentence.
Well, I studied with David Winters when I was young, and of course when he was in Memphis or I wasn't dating him, which was the only person I really wanted to date, I would rather take a dance class than do anything. So I studied he was on La Cienega at the Cornet Theater, and we had these great dance classes. It was Terry Garr, it was Tony Basil, and Ann Margaret was one of his students. And then when Viva Las Vegas, when she got hired for that, she got them to hire David Winters, who was a star in West Side Story originally. He's a great dancer. Anyway, so I went on the audition and got the audition on my own to dance in Viva Las Vegas. So on the roulette table where we're dancing to What I Say, it's Elvis, Ann Margaret, and Elvis and I are butt to butt on several of the songs. And then I danced in a bunch of his movies after that. And full circle, what I'm really proud of right now is Priscilla always said to me, "Sandy, if you get a good idea, tell me," because when Wink did the 20th anniversary, he and George Klein emceed and hosted the 20th anniversary of Elvis's passing. And they had this huge show, which some of you may have seen Elvis in concert that's traveled. Well, we're sitting there, Wink and I cried through the whole rehearsal. It was the best footage of him and when he was his most gorgeous. And we're sitting there crying. And so then I said to this young man who was working for Graceland, who's no longer with us, his name was Todd Morgan, I said, "Oh my gosh, this is so fantastic, Wink." And I said, "You are going to, you're going to take this so that everybody who had never had the opportunity to see Elvis could actually see him." Because when he did this, when they showed the video, they had his real band on stage, And Elvis on video would say, "Play it, James," and the spotlight would go on James Burton live there standing, playing the song, and you'd get chill bumps. It was so awesome. So I said, you got to do this around the country. Well, this young man, Todd Morgan, looked at me kind of funny, and because Wink and I said, this is a no-brainer. And then he didn't talk to me for the rest of the time we were there that trip, and I thought, wow, I wonder if we said something to upset him. And then the next thing I know, this is touring all over the world, and guess who got a promotion at Graceland? Todd Morgan. So Priscilla, one day I just had to tell Priscilla, I said, Priscilla, that was actually, we came up with that idea because you said it was just for that night, just for the Elvis fans. And she said, well, Sandy, whenever you have a good idea, just tell me. So year before last, Wink went to cut his birthday cake. They invited us back. So I always wear my Wink watch and my Wink glasses. So I thought, well, for this trip, I'll have a pair made and put Elvis on one side and Wink on the other. So it's my first love and my last love.
Oh, that's great.
All the Elvis fans went cuckoo over him. Oh, Mrs. Martindale, I want those glasses. I said, I can't sell those glasses. They have Elvis on it. And so I thought, I do have a good idea. So I called Priscilla and I said, Priscilla, I have a good idea. She said, what is it? And she said, send me a picture. So I sent her a picture of the glasses. Of course, it has Wink and Elvis. And she said, Sandy, they're adorable. But why would I want Wink on there? I said, no, Priscilla, it can say Elvis on both sides. She said, let's do it. So she kind of red carpeted me through. I didn't have to do any licensing. Of course, she makes the most money, but hey, I'm making some money. I make the glasses. I make Elvis watches. I make an Elvis purse. We have iPhone cases. And it's been a year now, and I actually have a little line that's at Graceland of products. And so they had me come back to do a trunk show for them this last August. Wink and I were there, and we both did interviews and did a lot of things. So I'm in business now. So I can keep my husband in the style to which he's become accustomed.
All right, last thing before we wrap it up. Shadoe, come here. For those of you who've not heard a little bit, just let's do 2 or 3 minutes. But one person that I got to speak was Shadoe. Shadoe came in, and it was one of the highlights of all the sessions we ever had. And if you could just give us a couple minutes, your history was so great. And the line that always cracked me up the most was, of the stations you were at, when you got to KRLA, you completely changed the format of KRLA. You did 8 or 10 months. You can correct me wherever I'm wrong. And he got fired from KRLA, and 3 days later, the ratings came out, and KRLA was #1. That line always sticks with me. How that.
Well, the story is.
Not that it's only happened to you; it's happened to others. But okay, I'll let you tell it in 1 second. But isn't it interesting how we have so much KRLA? You've been at KRLA. You were never at KRLA, Tom, right? No. Okay, but Larry's now at KRLA. They're different KRLAs, but still KRLA for so many. Okay, tell that little story. Are you ready to go? Okay.
Well, what happened was I went in and I changed this format, and it became wildly successful. And then, as management would often do, they had really better ideas. And the better ideas I knew would be, when the ratings went down, I'd be blamed. So I resigned. And then I stayed on as a personality. And the new guy came in, and I was there a few months. And I went back to school at Art Center School, and I'm happy. And he says, I got to let you go. Oh, really? And I laughed. I laughed because we were doing well. I mean, we had ratings. And he goes, I know that you're cynical about what we're doing. You're always smiling. I'm being fired for smiling too much? I'm happy. Nobody here is happy. So he said, I talked to him for 2 hours, and he said, I got to stick to my original decision, so I got to let you go. So I go into the accountant, and the accountant glares at me, and he says, I hope you go out and you spend this check in the first 2 weeks, and 2 weeks from now you don't know where your next penny is coming from. Maybe then you'll come to the meaning of life. What's the meaning of life, Don? He goes, management is God. I went, whoa. He goes, it's true. And he thumped his finger on the desk. They put the food in your mouth, the roof over your head. Management is God. I went, well, I feel sorry for you, Don, but I got to go. So I left, and I didn't know what I'd be doing next. And then they hired me back a couple of weeks later for more money. I don't understand radio. I've never understood radio. So that was KRLA. It was good times and bad times, and then came K-Rock, and then things got really confusing. I'm really proud to be among you all. There's so many legends in this room, so many people that are so talented and care about this industry so much, and I am humbled to be with you, and thanks for putting this together.
But it's all over now.